I just want to do God's will.
What you're seeking is a blessing from God.
You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robison. Good to have you on this Monday. Chat is open. Be a part of the conversation. Now, I don't believe most of what I hear in the news. I don't believe the headlines. I don't believe the feeds that certain internet companies are aggregating for me. I generally just come in with skepticism. There are some great websites for those of you who are like me. The one we have, the stream.org, great news site. There's several of them out there. One of the great ones, though, I got to say, is the Christian Post. And the Christian Post has been doing a great job just reporting what's going on, the items that concern Christians. And if I can get my clicks in line, there it is. This is the Christian Post today, so you can see the headlines there. I mean, it's news, but it's not the tainted stuff that you're being spoon-fed every day by the mass media. There is something going on that is talked about some in the media, but you have no idea what's going on. And you're going to find out today. My guest is Brandon Showalter. He is a reporter for the Christian Post, and he has been reporting on some pretty serious things. He's also a fellow of the John Jay Institute for Faith, Society, and Law. I don't entirely know what that means, but it sounds extremely impressive. So I might have him explain it to me. But there is really, I'll just let him tell you, because you're going to be shocked. You're going to be shocked today. So if you want to hit share, this would be a good time to do it. But you're going to find out some things today that the media is not telling you or lying to you about. And we're going to expose it right here on Life Today Live. Brandon, great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, what's the fellow at the John Jay Institute?
The John Jay Institute for Faith, Society, and Law is a post-undergrad academic fellowship that I did back in 2007 and 8, equipping Christian public leaders in all spheres, politics, government, the church. We care deeply about the intersection of faith and public life. And so I never foresaw being in journalism, but that fellowship very much equipped me for what I'm doing today.
Okay, so you have the academic background to do what you're doing, which is great.
Well, a little bit. I'm now a graduate student at the Catholic University of America also, so I'm always learning, ongoing training. So
you told me that the thing that you're looking into now is you tell me, because I don't want to misappropriate your words, but basically it's the greatest evil you think we've seen in our times.
Yes. What I would describe as the greatest evil I think I've ever seen has been, it's now years. I started here at Christian Post in the summer of 2016, and soon thereafter started learning about what was happening not only in culture and in journalism with the overwriting and the twisting of our language to communicate gross untruths, calling a man she and her, and this gaslighting of the public with all these crazy words and language manipulation, tools. It was just mind-blowing. But in addition to that, I started learning about what was happening to children medically in pursuit of this insane concept of a self-defined gender identity apart from one's biological sex. I learned about how doctors in America and around the world were giving children high-powered drugs to stop, block, arrest, halt their normal puberty, and then follow that with cross-sex hormones, and then perhaps even a surgery in pursuit of this gender identity, as though it's actually physiologically possible to become the opposite sex. I had no idea this was happening. To the extent that it was, I knew about a few what they call transvestites down at Mardi Gras in New Orleans, but I had no idea it was happening to children. And so I just couldn't look away. And the carnage is just piling up in my inbox now, and it's pretty ghastly.
So we hear, someone, they are born with a certain set of anatomy that defines them as male or female, but we've said, you know what, if you don't feel that way, then it's okay. science can help you transition. Transition is the word. And it goes beyond just the cross-dressing I've seen those guys do down in New Orleans.
Yeah.
It goes into actually changing your body. And that sounds like, hey, if somebody wants to do what they want to do, it's your body, your choice, unless we're talking about the vaccine, but we're not talking about that today. But you're saying that it's not healthy?
Well, there are absolutely young people who, for whatever reason, have endured some horrible things, perhaps trauma. I mean, people who have endured child sexual abuse, or they just have some really profound psychiatric issues or mental health problems, do experience what they call gender dysphoria, confusion, incongruence about one's biological sex. But this entire industry of transitioning, as you say, medicalizes this problem. And up until very recently, the approach that was known in the psychiatric, psychological field was called watchful waiting. And the overwhelming majority of young people who were legitimately experiencing these really distressing feelings, if given time to just go through puberty, it would resolve on its own. But with the medicalization of gender, there has now been this pathway created where young people are told that they can choose to declare their own gender identity, and there is a cottage industry that will sort of help them along, again, on this medicalized path. But it is absolutely terribly destructive, because you do not push a pause button on puberty, as the gender activists like to say. They say that if you block your puberty with drugs, that you're just buying people some time to decide about what they want to go. But you can't buy back time. Puberty is something that's critical for your body to go through. Your brain needs it to develop, your bones, it affects your whole body. And so what they are doing is trying to overwrite the plain truth of biology. No one has ever been born in the wrong body. Biological sex is an immutable trait. And this notion that somehow you can become the opposite sex is completely false. But there's a swath of the medical industry, and it's growing, that's now committed to that lie.
So what are they doing? I mean, is this just some kid taking, or even an adult just taking, like the equivalent of some vitamins to change the level of estrogen or other hormones, or are they going beyond that?
Well, it's all part of a longer, there's a whole pathway to it. And so if a child is presenting in front of a supposed professional who is confused, or he's got some kind of deep psychiatric issue, and it can be debated just how many children are really suffering like this, because I think some of this is driven by, a lot of it actually, probably by parents who want attention. And there's this really sick, twisted dynamic that goes on where parents bring their children into these offices, and these clinicians will basically write these referrals for blockers and all that stuff. So there's this grooming that happens. But let's say that there's a child that's genuinely suffering, and he comes before one of these clinicians. There's this process of what they call social affirmation, where they might change the name, use opposite sex pronouns. There will be this, educating of the family to sort of go along with this new thing and help them adjust to calling Jack Jill, or calling, Sam Susie, or Susie Sam. And then they will proceed, depending on the age of the child, to a more medicalized pathway. And then if they are trying to block puberty right before Tanner stage 2, which is the endocrine terminology for when a child is about to go through puberty, where the pituitary starts the pubertal signaling in the brain, they will administer a hormonal agent to suppress that from happening and from kicking that into gear. If they then do that and they're successful at that, the body is not going to go through the normal development, and they can then continue on with, if they are a girl, testosterone, or a boy, estradiol, and then perhaps even onto a surgery. I have seen surgeries documented, breasts being removed on girls as young as 13. I've seen evidence that it was done on a 12-year-old. I'm not for sure about the 12-year-old, but so there are surgeries happening at younger ages. And it also depends on the state that you live in. The age of medical consent in the state of Oregon is 15. So minors are able to consent to a lot of these experimental procedures and practices. Usually, I think the youngest genital surgery on a boy is like 16 or 17. Most famously, it was the case of Jazz Jennings, who at 18 had his genitals amputated. It was documented on that TLC show, I Am Jazz. But because he'd been taking all of these drugs for so many years, he had a micro penis. His penis hadn't developed. He had the penis of a 9-year-old, but they still cut it off. And now that poor boy is still struggling. He's got all kinds of mental health issues, and he's gained, I think, approximately 100 pounds in the past 2 years because I'm sure he's still taking estradiol, which is no doubt putting a lot of pressure on his heart, and it's contributed to binge eating. So it's just, we are setting children and minors up for a whole host of terrible medical complications and irreversible consequences.
Well, I thought this was perfectly safe and actually good for the child if you believe the headlines. I'm being facetious.
Well, that's what the media propagandists will tell you, and what they will say relentlessly. It's that either we allow these children and young people to do this, or they will commit suicide. That's their main sinister threat that they use. That these children are so troubled that unless you alter their bodies in this permanent way, it is all but guaranteed that they are going to end their own lives. So, I don't doubt that there are some very troubled young people that have experienced some suicidality. I don't want to make light of that. They have my compassion. I'm sure it's a truly torturous feeling to genuinely experience incongruence about your biological sex and have that kind of, internal turmoil. That I would, of course, be compassionate, and I have great compassion for people who endure that. But you do not heal the mind by cutting the body or by foreclosing the fertility of the body. I mean, since when did it become medically ethical to administer drugs to a child that would eventually cause him or her to be permanently sterile? When we look back at past medical scandals where the fertility and the fruits thereof were stolen for example, Black women in the South, and the Tuskegee Airmen, and all. We look back at when fertility was stolen from people, and we regard that as scandalous. Well, I say the same is true here, and it doesn't change just because it's wrapped in a rainbow flag.
Oh, goodness. Okay, we're talking. That's a poignant statement. We're talking to Brandon Showalter, the Christian Post reporter. You can follow what he does at ChristianPost.com. And here's a recent article he wrote just this summer on a judge who was blocking the puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and gender surgery for kids. And this is a political battle, and one that this is why part of the reason we're talking about this today, because you need to know about it, because you can put political pressure from the ground up to stop the destroying people, frankly. And it's weird because they're saying, "Oh no, this is liberation for us. This is what we want." Have we been doing this long enough to really see the effects of it? Or is there anything that's not being reported, Brandon, in the media that would say, "Hey, no, this actually is not a good long-term solution because here are the cases"?
This medical scandal would not be happening at all, and I do regard it as a medical scandal, one of the worst of all time in my estimation, but for the lying, pathologically deceitful journalists in our news agencies who will not scrutinize this at all because they're committed to this narrative that this is saving lives. The most that I have seen was a few months ago, 60 Minutes did, to their credit, and this shocked me, featured an hour, in their hour-long broadcast, they did have, I think, 7 or 8 minutes featuring what are known as detransitioners, those who actually underwent some of these hormonal and surgical procedures and then later regretted it, and how they were rushed into it without any exploration of their underlying mental health issues. Leslie Stahl interviewed a few of them, but the rest of the broadcast was this pro-gender identity propaganda. But those stories of detransitioners, they are out there, and they're trying to find ways through alternative media, through their own YouTube channels, through Christian media and other more conservative leaning outlets to try and say, no, I was told this was going to solve my problems and it didn't. I interviewed a detransitioner who was, the way these surgeries and hormones were marketed to him, it was like, he said it was like a multi-level marketing upsell. He was like on the conveyor belt getting into this entire operation, and he went through a terrible time. He showed me his medical documents, and I had to corroborate him. He didn't use his name on the record, but I definitely spoke with others who knew him, and they confirmed that his story was true. And I saw court filings and, again, medical records he shared with me, so I knew it was true. The poor guy was enticed into an orchiectomy, which is the surgical removal of the testicles. He was told that, they never used sex-specific terms for his body when he was in these appointments, and they were told that he was they were gonna remove the small piece of the part of the body that makes the testosterone. So he's thinking, well, there's just gonna be a little tiny piece of my genitals removed. Well, he came up out of that surgery realizing that he'd been castrated.
Jeez.
And then about a year later, he not only has a really hijacked endocrine system, that poor guy wound up ejaculating blood. I mean, it's just gruesome what these surgeries do to the body. And, we're not just an amalgamation of parts smashed together. We're a whole functioning organism, and we need all of our systems to work together, synchronized like they are supposed to.
Is there any blowback coming on the big pharma for some of these?
I think we are just now seeing some of the opposition rise to the surface because, again, the media is so committed to this narrative that this is the next frontier of the civil rights movement, that they are trying to overwrite civil rights laws to guarantee all of these protections. And, I'll just say what is particularly fascinating about this issue is that there is broad opposition to it on the right and the left, but you'd never know it because the press is framing this as a right versus left fight. You've got your traditional religious conservatives fighting this on the usual grounds, but there are also, I've engaged with plenty, rising numbers of radical feminists and even gays and lesbians who are furious about this. And if you think about it, this is so damaging to women especially, and even same-sex attracted women. I've heard firsthand accounts of same-sex attracted youth going into these clinics and being told that their same-sex attraction was actually evidence that they were born in the wrong body and that they're really transgender. I mean, it's just insane. And when we see, especially when we see, because this is mostly affecting teenage girls with respect to what's happening with youth, feminists are rightly upset that they're told that these teenage girls who may be a little quirky or on the autism spectrum or have atypical interests, that somehow means that they really must be a man inside. And then they're given testosterone and they grow beards and their voices become buzzy and lowered. I mean, it's hatefully misogynistic, this entire push is. And so there is opposition, you just have to look for it. But again, if you are only paying attention to the quote unquote mainstream news outlets, you're going to get one narrative, and that this is a right versus left fight. That's not accurate.
Yeah. I find it interesting that some people on the left are not real keen on this as well, even in the feminist community. And here's an example, and I'm guessing you probably saw this, but the New York Times tweeted this last week, and I can't remember which arm of our government did. I think it was the Surgeon General, about Dr. Rachel Levine, who for 54 years lived or 45 years, for most of his life, lived as a man,
right,
was sworn in as the first female four-star admiral in the history of the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. Men are winning scholarships, they're winning in athletics, and now they're being heralded as the first woman to accomplish something, even though for the vast majority of this person's life, they lived as they were born, which was a man. And I know I can get kicked off social media for saying that because one of our congressmen did over the weekend for saying that as well. But this is a bizarre world we live in, where I can decide I'm a woman and therefore be the first woman to do something when really I'm just another dude.
We are awash in lies. And you might say, if I were to use feminist parlance, the new patriarchy wears a dress.
Oh man, that's great. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. How do we as Christians?
It's ferociously misogynistic. And I think men and women of all goodwill, whatever your political leanings, whatever your partisan affiliation, should recognize this and stand up and be counted, because it's a disgrace what's being done to women and girls. Title IX, for all intents and purposes, has been gutted. It's been gutted.
Yeah.
Everything that women and girls have achieved in the athletic arena, educational opportunities, they're being undermined by these males who have suddenly decided that they're female, and it's a lie. No. I mean, the accomplishments that they have earned and worked hard for, they deserve to have their records. I mean, I'm not yet a father, but I want my daughters to achieve everything that they can possibly achieve. And to have some boy or some man just take it from them, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, and we also see in Loudoun County the problem of a boy deciding he's a girl and then going into the locker room or bathroom and sexually assaulting girls. I mean, the madness is.
Well, and we were told that never happens. That we were fear mongering by raising those concerns.
Right.
When you open the line, when you erase sex as a meaningful category and you replace it with gender identity, you open the door to predators, because they can then say, by mere self-declaration, because that's what gender identity is, and it always belongs in air quotes, by the way, because it's not even real. No, I'm serious. Like, don't ever.
I know. I'm laughing with you.
but when you erase that critical distinction, you open the door for things, and it's not fear mongering to point that out. It's just having foresight.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Here's one question I have. When you talk about the starting down that trail of the medical aspect of the transitioning, where does that start? Is that in the school counselor's office? Is that at Planned Parenthood? I mean, how are our children getting? Because most kids that came home and said, "Hey, Mom, Dad, here's what I want to do. I want to start down this path, and here's how it is." Most parents would be like, no. I hear you with what you're going through, the struggle you're going through, but I got a better solution. But they're being dragged down this path. How's this being done right under our noses?
It's everywhere. It's on social media. It's in cartoons. And yes, it's in schools. And you may not think, especially if you live in a really conservative area, that it's in your school. I would double check, because they slip it in. It's been this very slick marketing campaign in books, comics. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to escape from it. And you sound almost paranoid, but then you realize, oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, they had recently I'm here in the Washington, D.C. area, but in neighboring Virginia, they found books in the school library that were full on, pedophilia, illustrations of adults and children doing disgusting sexual things together in the school library. Yeah. And there was all of the transing stuff too, with these books that were just celebrating that. So a kid could very well go to the library and read about this in his own school. And I mean, it's just mind blowing when you realize, when your eyes are opened to just where all of this is. In the Muppets, Disney, I mean, it's just everywhere. So I hear a variety of different things when I get phone calls from parents who say, where did they even find this stuff? It's like, well, you just have to have an extra watchful eye, because you'd think you could have some space to get away from it when it's just colonized almost all of culture.
No, yeah, Facebook likes to advertise it to me for some reason. They think that those are the kind of ads I want to see. Yeah, it does feel pushy. How do we as Christians, people who believe that we have the better solution to whatever struggle you're going through, and who do want to compassionately walk with you through your struggles, how do we address this without just sounding like we're raging against society and getting bitter and how do we do this the right way? Because there has to be, we know the better way, and we want people to have the better way, and we want life and health and happiness for people. But sometimes when you go up against the world system that's moving in the complete opposite direction, we don't always handle it right in the church. And this is something I do want to handle with compassion. I mean,
Right.
somebody today may be struggling with this or may have already started down the path and they're watching today. I don't want them to think that we hate them or anything, because we don't.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
feel horrible for them. We want to help walk them out of it. Well, how do we do this?
We absolutely need to have compassion for people who are genuinely struggling. I cannot emphasize that enough. Yes, walk through a process with people who are, for whatever reason, experiencing this really torturous condition. No arguments on it. But in as much as we need to have compassion, we also need to be shrewd. And we cannot allow compassion to be weaponized against us. And I encounter this with Christians a
that's good.
lot.
That's good.
They just want to show love, they want to be kind, and that's noble and that's right. And in a pastoral context, if someone's really struggling and suffering, that's absolutely what I believe the Lord would do, and give them space for that process. But we're also called to be shrewd as snakes. And so don't let your compassion be weaponized against you, and don't lend credence to any of this ideology with your words. Don't say the word transgender at all, male or female. Keep it simple. Tell your kids the truth often, and just do not allow the brainwashing to happen in your household, because it's astonishing how quickly a generation has been captured by this stuff, and it's everywhere you turn. So you have to be the people that will refuse to participate in it at all. Not even with your words, jealously guard and oversee what your kids are watching on television. I would get them off social media completely. And I would even say, depending on where you are, get your kids out of the public schools, because they are grooming an entire generation, and they basically created a school to gender clinic pipeline. And the people who are pushing this and wanting to dissociate and dismantle children from their own bodies aren't slowing down. And I say this to people who I talk to, and I get phone calls from people on the left and the right, Christian and non-Christian. Their lives have been shattered by this because their children have gotten their breasts amputated, or they're on these hormones now, and everything that they thought they knew was just upended, and they're just in turmoil, and they cannot believe how quickly it happened. What I say to them is that I genuinely believe that this wickedness is so entrenched in high places that it's going to have to take a supernatural move of God to displace it. Meanwhile, we have to do our little part and tell the truth and not participate in it, and do what we can and trust that God will bless that. But you can also pray. Don't underestimate the power of prayer, because it's some of the most diabolical wickedness that I have ever seen. What could be worse than taking advantage of a child and lying to him or her about the truth about their own body, and telling them that it's wrong? And not only that it's wrong, but you need to pump them full of drugs and cut off certain body parts in pursuit of this nebulous lie called gender identity. Say no to it.
I think you're absolutely right. And you said something there that I just want to hit before I let you go. You said this school to clinic pipeline. Is that really where it's happening the most?
It seems to be one of the main sources.
Yeah.
If I had to say, out of every 10 phone calls I receive, probably half of them are like, my kid came home from this school presentation, or guidance counselor, or teacher, or at the Gay Straight Alliance at school roped my kid into this, and I have no idea what this is, and I had no idea that this was even being allowed. I mean, I know of one mom, just to give you an example, who it was at a Gay Straight Alliance club at her school, which was, I think, the starting point, if not one of them, at the school where, and this was probably 7 or 8 years ago now when this first started, but this poor girl is, I think, now 21 years old. She's been on testosterone. She's gotten her breasts cut off. She's gotten her entire reproductive system, uterus and ovaries, cut out. Jeez. And she even had her forearm surgically de-sleeved, phalloplasty operation to make a fake penis.
Oh, God.
And she's only 21. She moved to a liberal state where she could change her age or change her name and legal gender in court. She did it. This girl I've seen pictures of this poor young woman. It about sent me into apoplexy. It's terrible what's happening to children, and the press will not report on it in any critical fashion. Our children are sliced up.
Are you suggesting that she is not more fulfilled in finally becoming what she thought she was? Because, I mean, that would be the way, right?
her life is in ruins. I mean, she cannot, it's absolutely awful. I mean, if the American public could hear a smidgen of the anguish and the excruciating agony that I do on the phone and see some of the contents in my inbox, I think this would end tomorrow.
Well, that's what we're counting on, is for you to show us the truth. Brandon, I appreciate your time and the work that you do, and look forward to really seeing some of the truth of what's going on out there to try to maybe wake people up and stop hurting people, man. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for your time today.
It's never loving to lie. Always tell the truth.
There you go. Sum it up. There's your statement right there. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Appreciate all the comments, Freddie, Gabriel, Judy, Paulette, all you guys. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. Do hit share, hit like, and subscribe. That will help just move it up in the feed so more people can see it. So we just want to get the truth out there. We don't like seeing people being hurt, being misled, being taken advantage of, and that's why we talk about these things. But we've got more great interviews this week on Life Today Live. If you haven't subscribed or followed Life Today TV on all the social medias, do it, because they're probably not going to like this one. So we'll see what happens. But we got to tell the truth, and that's what we're going to do. We'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.
But enjoy it. Squeeze all the fun you can out of it. This is your hour. Because it's soon going to end. And truth will be on the throne for a change. Sunday is coming.